Okay, so public recording, August 18th, Kubernetes Scalability SIG now begins. Engage. I was just saying I've been out on vacation, so I'm a little behind on things, but it looked like the notes from last week there was a fair bit going on. So
I think we could, if we collect agenda items, there's a bunch of stuff to talk about. There's the etcd3 stuff. There's the the sorted nest of issues that the garbage collector controller exposed. Other performance issues that we're kind of running into with both the watches and some other stuff. So the laundry list that has gone on this last couple of days has been pretty large.
all right, I'm putting some things in here. Looked like there was a stack used to test 2K density test runs, Docker version and patches, etc. I'm not sure who put that in. Did you put that in, Joe? Or
David Watson. David, are you here?
Oh yeah, David. Good. That's definitely been a topic for us as well. So, well, David, you got your agenda item in first. There were there any others? That's probably enough to keep us busy here for a bit.
Right. Do we want to go in reverse order or?
Yeah, why don't we do that? The stack question might be a little bit lengthier than some of these others. So why don't we do that? Tim, did you have any one of these you want to start with? You want to start with the etcd3 or?
I can give a quick update. And Wojtek has notes too, and so does Hong Chao. So I think we're all party to the crime here. So I have the fixes available for the client stuff to enable for the testing. I was able to get that in this morning, but I'm in some type of testing purgatory. I don't know if a lot of other people are seeing this, but like I'm getting random test failures that have nothing to do with my PRs. It's happening with increased frequency. I think it's like an end of the cycle.
Which tests, like integration or unit or E2E?
Depends on the day of the week. So earlier this week, it was GKE. Now it's on
GKE was broken. There was a day that GKE was basically broken, so those weren't flakes. Like this was simply broken, and it's fixed now, or should be fixed.
Today it's GCE or the ETEs.
Oh, okay. So because there are also some problems with integration tests, like I don't know if it's related to like too low memory on our machines or something like that, but some random tests don't compile like randomly. So yeah, there are some issues. Yeah.
So the PRs are released up, and I saw Hung Chao put in the TLS one, but I think it still needs a unit test. Is there a list? I know you created that list on the feature repo. Should we enumerate that for the larger audience of things that still need to get done?
We can move it to some other issue, sure, or to doc or whatever.
There's a smaller listing of basically action items that need to occur for migration and whatnot. Is there any actually code changes that are needed anymore on the feature repo? I don't.
So it depends how do we like define code changes. There are some code changes in terms of like setup scripts and stuff like that, but I'm not aware of any like code changes not being scripts.
Okay.
At least like for now.
Tim, I was looking to see if Aaron happened to join us this morning, but I know from his last commentary to me after the SIG testing meeting was that there seemed to be some pretty big code changes that were getting put in at, what I think he certainly felt were a little bit late in the process. So it doesn't surprise me to hear you saying you're seeing things maybe get a bit flaky here at the end.
Yeah, and some of the big changes have exposed some other issues too. So I think etcd, I think, is the feature repo, which we should probably link to, has Wojtek wrote up the short list of things that still need to be done for etcd 3.
So I have a question for Wojtek, like about rolling back to like from V3 data to V2 as you requested. I'm just wondering, like, can we assume like the V2 data is empty because like that's much easier. We can just write a simple like, V2 data file instead. But if there's V2 data, we kind of need to like, patch it and merge it.
I think we can assume that it's empty. Like if it's not empty, we can probably delete the data that's there.
Sure, great, thanks.
I mean, we don't need to like merge this data from whatever there is. Yeah.
Did you want to move on to the garbage collection issues, Tim?
Sure. I mean, Wojtek's got color on that one. I saw those PRs flying through. It exposed that controller problem, which was fixed. I mean, we were seeing something weird on other PRs with the deep down in the data structure of the reflector.
Yeah, so there was at least one race, which is hopefully fixed, but like I'm not 100% it's fixed, sure that it's fixed, but hopefully it is. Like, so that was one issue. It was like, yeah, it was reflector issue. There is also like a huge increase in memory consumption in both controller manager, which is kind of expected, but also in API server. And the reason for that is basically that garbage collector is using dynamic client, which is using JSONs, and for all other clients are using protobufs now, and it's like a known issue. But like basically we need to make a decision if we want to enable it without with JSONs or not. It's not, it's in my opinion it's not a blocker, but it needs to be a conscious decision that our components will be using, like API server will be using 2 times more memory. So yeah.
What do we gain by having the garbage collector on that we wouldn't have otherwise? I mean, we've had these known issues for a lengthy period of time, but we're enabling the garbage collector to clean up some of the artifacts.
So I think the biggest change that we gain from it for now is like owner reference for controllers, which we don't want to enable without having garbage collector. And then like what it gives us is that basically you can tell in a constant time whether the pod, which controller owns a given pod, which is like significant portion of computations in different components, including scheduler and like controllers. And
so for instance, naive clients being able to get cleanup without having to implement a client-side Reaper. So like web consoles, like I think the dashboard was blocked on this, and a couple of other clients, people have reported, like once garbage collection goes in, the naive clients can delete controllers and not have pods left around. I kind of had assumed that this would be something that people want to choose to enable because of the impacts, but we do want people to enable it so we can fix the rest of the bugs that probably still exist in it, even though we're in a pretty good shape now, better than we were in 1.3. So not enabling it would probably just punt this problem, and then we would have the same problem in 1.5 that we would have to go fix. But it seems like people believe that the functional part of it is correct now.
Does it make sense to at least have the performance issues fixed in the 1.4 series, like cherry pick backwards?
I don't think it's going to be possible. So we got closure on how we would do it, or there's a proposal that we're going to write up in the API machinery for how we're going to enable partial object retrieval for protobuf so that a naive client can say, I want to get, so the dynamic client, the reason it's doing that is just to get at the object meta, to get at controller references. And we have a rough high-level agreement in the API SIG that we will introduce a mechanism that we can use to say, the generic client can say, I want to just get the object meta out of this protobuf object and get it back in protobuf, which should fix the API server side. And the rough timing for that is there's a lot of motivation to do that for 1.5, but I don't think we can guarantee we'll get it in 1.5. It's going to be too big to backport, though.
So let me ask some questions here. So the big thing here is being able to map back from an object to other things that are referencing that object via some sort of label query. Is that the cost here?
The cost here is the cache on the controller side that tracks all of the objects in the entire cluster in memory, and then the fetch is the cost. So the garbage collector has to keep all the graph, basically.
So, okay, I mean, there's this place in the scheduler where the scheduler actually makes decisions based on controller managers, and I find it, based on replication controllers, I find it offensive that the scheduler even knows what the hell a replication controller is.
So basically, like what scheduler is doing, or part of it is doing, it's like spreading by.
And I totally hear that, but if we want to offer spreading as a feature, that should be broken out as a feature. We shouldn't pollute the scheduler with knowledge of objects that don't hit, that shouldn't affect scheduling, at least logically, right? We should have a way to say, here's a spreading policy, and then have the replication controller set that spreading policy, right?
I think with this change
about the replication policy. Now, I don't know if that same sort of like layer violation is occurring again with the GC. I haven't kept up on that issue, but I think the fact that we have to keep the entire graph in memory to be able to do these things, to me, says that we've moved from this sort of choreography with a bunch of things making localized decisions to a world where we have something that has to have the global, view of what's going on.
So controller ref, I think, is the idea of moving to that local observation. So
okay.
So look up controller replication controllers. The pod says, "Here's my controller," and that's an opaque keying token.
Okay. So as long as it's explicit, then then we're moving in the right direction. I just, because there is a fundamental difference between explicitly setting up bidirectional connections and implied bidirectional connections, like what the scheduler does right now with respect to replication controllers.
I think in practice, all of the controllers ended up needing to post a reference back to themselves in practice because of dueling controllers, which, while the label selector sounds great, in practice, the downsides of dueling controllers was very bad. And the cost to fix dueling controllers is basically you put something on the thing that you created that other people can be like, yep, I don't touch you. Joe, to your point, though, about the graph, that most of that is because we don't have tombstones, any way to tombstone in etcd today, the deletion characteristic. So given it's a graph and that we have things coming and going that are disconnected and we can't build a single transactional tree, we have to have either tombstones or a long wait period. And the memory is basically dealing with that. I think there was a proposal maybe further down the road that we would track tombstones at some point by UID. And once we can track tombstones by UID, then the memory implications go away. But it's kind of like that short term, you get the thing you actually wanted, and then we have a path to long term, but I agree.
I honestly, I think, back references are totally sane. The semantics around the back references in terms of spreading and stuff like that, I think should be more explicit. I just want to make sure that we're not making another sort of instance of that ugliness that's in the scheduler right now. So it sounds like that's not the case. So I
I
will.
believe it is not the case, but we should double check that with Chow.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So given that we think that there may be a fix in 1.5 for some of the worst performance aspects of it, but there's no guarantee, do we want to hold it up, or do we want to make it be opt-in, or do we want to make it be opt-out, or have a recommendation? Like, is opting out of a new feature really that bad for end users? Do we have the control to turn it off, et cetera?
I mean, ideally, we'd have some sort of global setting that you could set here for like an experiment. I mean, I'm thinking about like the vendoring experiment that the Golang guys went through, and they were able to age that in over a couple of versions so that there was some leeway, right? So initially it was off by default, but you could turn it on. And then it was on by default, but you could turn it off. And then it's a done deal.
I'm trying to see if we have a flag for this today.
But we don't really have this capability for sort of global flags for behavior like this.
We kind of do on controller manager. Like in theory, the controller manager, the only thing that the memory impact is solely caused by running the garbage collection process. If you do not run the garbage collection process, you still get controller refs, but you don't, like the controller refs are done at creation time, so it's basically free. I think if the controller is off, there is zero impact to the system for garbage collection, and it is exactly the same as a 1.3 system.
Yeah, and I think it might be worthwhile to run the garbage collector in advisory mode, where it provides some sort of API or UI or whatever that says, here's the stuff that I would delete, right? And so, you know, as people turn this on, they may be able to have some insight in terms of, you know, dry run type of mode.
Turn it on, see if your cluster blows up. But that's worked well for us so far.
Yeah.
So just so I understand, it sounds like there's a path where we could add the refs by default, but not actually double memory usage, so long as cluster operators don't initiate garbage collection.
On controller manager today, there is a flag, enable garbage collector. Enable garbage collector defaults to false. So today, if you have a master cluster that you turn on today coming from master, you know, pre-1.4, garbage collection is not on by default. It has no memory impact, and the references are being set. And setting the flag to true will increase the memory usage. And when you go delete a deployment or a daemon set, all the pods get cleaned up by default.
Okay, I'm just sort of thinking as a cluster operator from a capacity planning perspective, if I'm being told memory usage could potentially double, I might need some additional time to give myself room for that. So maybe not enabling it by default would be the least surprising thing here. But I totally understand your position that the longer we don't enable it by default, the longer this continues to be a problem. Just thinking about the element of least surprise and really loud release notes or something.
Any idea what Google will do in GKE with regards to this?
Not yet decided.
I'm sitting here trying to think of it to the degree to which that matters. Just as a general principle, I think that a lot of folks still look to GKE as sort of the canonical running system, and defaults that kind of match what GKE does. There's some like principle of least surprise again there to echo what Aaron is saying.
I mean, I can say that from an OpenShift perspective, we are unlikely to enable this in OpenShift 3.4 for our customers because we still have some lingering security issues with regards to multi-tenancy to sort out. So in a multi-tenant namespace context where you might have users who are only editors, an editor can abuse references like deletion cleanup references to trick the system into deleting a resource that you don't have authority to delete, only to edit. And from a cube perspective, this doesn't matter. It only really matters when you have fine-grained roles and namespaces. So that's our primary concern, and we have the selfish desire that we would like to see all the bugs sorted out as well before we turn it on in production environments. So somebody's got to jump off the ledge first, and we have the excuse of security, but I do think we really need to move forward on this.
All right. Should we move on? I don't know. Was buried in there somewhere the watches issue? I don't think so.
That was separate.
All right. I think that would be the next one on the list here, Tim.
So Wojtek, you want to add the color? You opened the issue that you're seeing on the scale test.
So basically the problem is that in large, or at least like I've seen it only in large cluster, the problem is that from time to time, like once an hour or twice an hour or something like that, it happens that all the watchers are dropped. And the problem is basically that the watch between etcd and API server, because basically like all watches are currently served from API server, not from etcd. And there is just one watch between etcd and API server, and it sometimes like drops, and we cannot like retrieve the watch, and we need to release from the beginning and start watching from that point from etcd. And this means that we are terminating all watchers in the system for a given resource. And I don't yet know why this watch between API server and etcd is like dropping. This is something that we need to investigate.
Walter, is it reproducible? Like how long will it happen?
You mean like how often? No, it's like
how long? Like how long? So I think in your description it says like 40 minutes. Is it like as long as you run like 1 hour, it will definitely happen?
It probably will.
Sure. Like so we will probably like try to look at that and try to reproduce.
Is that a kubenetes cluster that you've been running to test it?
It happens. Yeah, it's like I've seen it both in real clusters and kubenetes clusters. And kubenetes is probably like easier to reproduce because less resources are needed.
Yeah, that's what I was aiming to figure out.
I see. I just feel like the connection between like SD and API server should like never drop. But yeah, we will probably take a look. Thanks.
So I've CC'd you to the issue that I opened. There are some logs from API server. It seems like that we are going out of the history of etcd, but I'm not sure why exactly. Like either like API server is not able to process fast enough, or etcd is not able to send fast enough, or
could this be an issue with compaction possibly? Like we're in the middle of a compaction cycle, because you have on your tests you're running v3 client, which starts compaction.
No, it's with v2 client still. Okay. It's not related to v3 API.
Okay.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left. Do you think we could move on to my question regarding stacks?
Yeah, we're getting a little short of time, but I think you should certainly at least explain the problem. Maybe we can hit it again next week if we need to.
Sure. So I think what my goal is I'd like to compile a list of versions and patches that anyone that is running 2,000 node clusters are using. So I think I know where Red Hat's patches are. I'm kind of interested in finding out if the patches and versions for GKE are available and where those are, so that I can compile some sort of diff of anyone running 2,000 node clusters and what their stack looks like.
Well, let's start up one level, which is what we're continuing to struggle with, which is large clusters that will pass density on, with sufficient reliability, and the failure rates that we get are pretty high, and it seems to be Docker issues, this sort of thing, and so we're just trying to still get to a point where we have a cluster setup that's sufficiently reliable. I mean, I think we see the community tests pass far more reliably than anything we can manage to assemble at this point, and it has us still pretty concerned.
So Upstream doesn't patch Docker. They just take straight up Docker, whatever version it is, and Dawn would know which version they're targeting for this release cycle. I don't believe they've shifted to 112 yet.
Right. Well, we'll certainly hit Dawn up for whatever it is we can get. But that's the thing we're after here.
For us, we will always lag. So sometimes we'll make the call after the release cycle. So we're willfully selfish in that we want to make sure that we're behind Upstream a little bit in case there's some 11th hour issue that occurs. So we will lag in that way. So we won't necessarily have an answer all the time because we'll be still vetting.
So Tim, do you reliably run 1,000 or 2,000 node density test?
Not against Upstream. We are still in the process of our vetting for our 1.3 rebase. And we're still finding issues, and I believe David Eads just picked some stuff this morning. So, and we are not reliably running at that scale, no, because we have a bunch of other stuff on our side. So OpenShift adds a bunch of extra resources and objects and controllers that to the point where we don't run the numbers that Upstream runs. We run denser clusters with less nodes.
And are you using 135?
I believe so.
Okay, and then Wojtek, what scale are you guys reliably able to run at?
So currently we have some reliability issues, but we basically are running continuously 2,000 node clusters. And 2,000, but we are mostly like running 2,000 node cube marks, which is like different, but we are also running like from time to time real clusters. But like currently, and we are running them from heads basically all the time.
Okay. So maybe we could take this offline. I'll contact each of you and see if I can find out what your stacks look like, in particular yours, Wojtek, because we're consistently running into problems with clusters far smaller than 1,000 nodes. I mean, even 100 node clusters, we've seen problems.
So if it's any consolation, there's a ridiculous number of hard-coded timing parameters inside of the tests. And that could usually be a weird source of issues and anomalies. And for a long time, we've struggled with that. And I know now that we have JBack, I've asked him to start tweaking or digging into that space again, because we logged the issue a long time ago. So if you're seeing errors, it'd be nice to have it like at least reported upstream what those errors are. And I wouldn't be surprised if a large number of them are timing artifacts.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yep.
I just want to mention, one long-standing, we can dig up the number if you're interested. One long-standing sort of open issue that we wanted to get is some way to point yourself at a cluster and say, tell me about yourself down to the level of all the parameters. And this isn't setting parameters, which is a whole nother effort, but this is just collecting meta information about a cluster so it's easily shareable. That's kind of been a want for a while, and so, help wanted. But if we had that, it'd be much nicer to it'd be much easier to share at least a lot of what you're asking about.
Right.
I don't see why we shouldn't report this meta information directly in etcd.
Good point. All right. I think we're out of time and out of items today, unless there's any final thoughts. Anyone? Anyone? All right. See everyone next time and at the community meeting.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.